Hello Divination and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create section chapters using Divi's new design options. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let me show you how to create these.
I'm going to start by creating a brand new page, and I've called this chapters, and then I'm going to click on use the Divi builder. So in here, I'm going to go straight to my visual builder. So here I'm going to create a 2-column row. Click this plus button here, add my 2 columns. I'm going to close this for now, go into my row settings, and I need to go into design and align this to the left like that. Next, let's go to the custom padding. So we need to come over here to spacing. So for the custom padding, we need to add 0 to the top, right, bottom, and left. So for now, we're going to go ahead and save, and then we're going to add a divider module. So I'm going to click this plus button here, search for my divider module. So here, I'm going to make sure I select it, click on design, and then on the color here, I'm going to make this black. Now let's go on to the styles and adjust all the styles. So I'm going to click on styles. So here we want to make this dotted. Okay, so you can already see now that this has changed, and the position is fine at the top. Next, let's go over here to sizing. So for the divider weight, I'm going to set this to 3. By setting it to 3, you can see that these are now far apart and they're more defined. Next, let's set our width to 62%. And for the module alignment, we are going to align this to the left. Okay, it's time now to save. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is to add our text module. So when I mouse over this, we can see that they're overlapping. So in order for us to make it easier for us to add our text module, I'm going to come over here to my wireframe view, and then I'm going to add my text module by just clicking here. Now you can see here that it's much easier for us to control all our modules. So anyway, I'm going to click my gear icon to go back into my text settings, and then I'm going to click this desktop icon to come back to our visual view. So here I'm going to add my chapter number, which is 01. Click on background, and here we need to use the linear gradient. So I'm going to click this second tab, click the plus button, add our first color. Now my colors here are going to have some transparency, so I'm going to add my RGBA value within the brackets like that. Click on the second color, and again this is going to have some transparency, so I'm going to add all my information in the brackets. So I'm going to paste it like that, and then for the linear for the gradient type, I'm going to set this to radial, and then for the start and end position, we're going to set this to 51 and 51. So you can see here now that we have a perfect circle. Now let's go to the design tab, click on text, and we're going to set this to about 53 pixels. So our font here is going to be Happy Monkey. So I'm going to search for it, and here it is. Okay, so before we move on and add the text color, let's come over here to this little icon and set our font size for the smartphone. So here we're going to set this to about 25, and then I'm going to click back to my desktop view, click on my text color and set this to black. So I'm just going to paste my color in here like that. So for our text orientation, let's make sure that this is centered, and we're going to set our line height to 1 EM. Next, we're going to come over here to the sizing option, and we're going to set our width to 40%. And then here we're going to make sure that our module alignment is set to centered. So for us to get this perfect circle here on this chapter number, we need to come over here to the sizing and add our custom margin and custom padding. So here on the custom margin top, I'm going to add -40 pixels, and then for the padding, we're going to add 40, 50, 40, and 50. So sometimes you may notice that you may not get a perfect circle. So what you need to do is to come over here and play around with the custom padding. So in my case here, I've changed this to 50, 70, 50, and 70. Okay, so for now we're done with this. I'm going to go ahead and save. And now it's time to add our second text module. So I'm going to come over here, click this plus button to add our text module. I'm going to search for it and select it. Right, so here we're going to paste chapter. So that's the text we need. Come over here to design. So we're going to click on text and set our text font to Arial. So here it is. So let's set our font size to 19. And then here we're going to set our text color to black. And for our text line height, let's set this to 1 EMs. And then we're going to make this centered so it's right below this chapter. So next, let's come over here to our sizing tab and let's reduce this to about 97%, like that. Then make sure that this is centered. So now we can see that our chapter here and the text are too far apart. So in order for us to fix that, we need to add a custom margin of -15 pixels. Let's come over here to spacing, custom margin, and I'm going to add my -15. So you can see here that this has shifted a little bit. Now, if you want to add a bit more, you can just adjust by increasing your margin top. Okay, so now I think -25 works for me. So I'm going to leave it at that. Click on save. Okay, so what we need to do next is to add one more text module. So instead of redesigning it, I'm just going to clone this. So I'm going to click this button here, and then I'm going to go into the settings. So here we're going to change the text to services, like that. Come over here to design, click on text. So here we're going to leave the size as it is, but we're going to make it bold. So I'm going to come over here to my text font weight, select bold. Now let's go to the sizing tab. So I'm going to click on sizing and we're going to set this to 99%, like that, and keep it centered. And then finally, we need to adjust the margin. So here I'm just going to try -20 and see how that looks. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at -25, but you can play around with this and see what looks nice in your case. Now, in my case here, I have a large screen, so sometimes things may not look the same when it comes to setting my margins. Okay, so we're done with this. You can see that this chapter marker is beautiful. So go ahead and try it out. Now it's time to go to the second design. So for now, I'm going to save this. Okay, so what we're going to do next is to add a brand new row. So I'm going to click this plus button here. We're going to select 2 columns. And I'm just going to close this for now. And as we did before, I'm going to come over here to my row settings and align this to the right. So I'm going to come to design, alignment, and align it to the right. Next, let's come over here to design and click on spacing. And we're going to add a custom padding of 0 throughout. So I'm going to add 0 to the top, right, bottom, and left. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and save. And then as we did before, we're going to add our divider. So I'm going to click this plus button here because our divider needs to be to the extreme right. So I'm going to search for my module like that, click on divider. And we're going to make sure that this is set to show divider because that's where we're going to add our styles. Next, let's come over here to background, click the second tab, click the plus button. So here we're going to add our colors for our linear gradient. So I'm going to select my first color. And here we're going to add an RGBA value within the brackets because the color that we're going to add here is transparent. So next I'm going to click my second color, add my second color, and then I'm just going to change my start position to 43, like that. So we can see over here to the right that we're getting this beautiful gradient here. Now it's time to add the divider color. So we're going to come to the design tab, click on color, and we're going to click anywhere around here for us to access our color options. And because this is going to be an RGBA value, I'm going to paste it in between the brackets like that. Next, we're going to come over here to the styles and make sure that solid and top is selected. Next, let's come over here to our sizing and make sure that our divider weight is set to 3. Our height should be set to 11 and our width to 63. For our modular alignment, let's set this to right, like that. So that's all we need to do for now. So next we need to start adding our text modules. So I'm going to come over here, click this plus button and add my text module. So I'm going to search for it first and then select it. So this is going to be chapter 2. So I'm just going to add 02 in here. Come over here to design, click on text, and I'm going to search for my font here, and it's called Cantanta 1. Our text font size needs to be set to 100, like that. Right, so let's go ahead and add our text color. So this should be set at black. So I'm going to paste my value in here. Our line height 1.7 is fine. and this needs to be aligned to the right, like that. So next we're going to come over here to our spacing, add our custom margin to the top of -95. And again, you can see here in my example that this is not right in the middle, so you can adjust this until you get your right positioning. So I'm going to leave this for now because I'm going to go ahead now and start adding our padding. So here it's going to be 40, 50, 40, 50, like that. So -95, let's try -90. Right, so that's much better. So instead of 95, I'm going to use -90. So for now, I'm going to save. And I'm going to add another text module. So I'm going to click this plus button here, search for my text module. So here I'm going to call this chapter, like that. Come over here to design, text. Now our text is going to be Arimo, so it's right here. So I'm going to select it. The color is going to be black. Right, so let's set our text size to 20. And we're going to make sure this is centered. And our line height needs to be set to 1 EM. Now we have a problem. Our settings that we had has moved this chapter marker all the way down. So this ideally needs to be, this line needs to be going across the 0, 2. So let's add our custom margin to the top. So we're going to come over here to spacing, add a custom margin of -50 and save. Next, let's add one more text module. So I'm going to select my text module from here, add it. Right, so we're going to call this services. Click on the design tab. Now for our text, we're going to use something different. We're going to search for lobster 2. We're going to make it slightly bigger. So let's start off with say 43. Yeah, that looks fine. And then I'm going to add black to my color, like that. Make sure that it's centered, so it's right below the chapter. For our line height, let's set this to 1 EM. And now, as before, you can see that our services text is not quite close to the chapter. So in order for us to achieve that, we need to come over here to spacing and add a custom margin of -30. So you can see now it's closer. So that's all we need to do for this one. So I'm going to save and let's move on to the next one. Right, so let's go ahead and add a brand new row. And we need 2 columns in here. So we're going to close this for now. And come over here to our row settings. We're going to align this to the left and then back to the content here. In fact, before we add anything, we need to add the backgrounds. So here we're going to add a background color in the first column. So we're going to click this plus button here to add our linear gradient. Click the plus button to add our first color. So I'm going to paste it in here. Click on my second color. Now my second color is going to be an RGBA value because it has some transparency. So I'm going to add my settings in the brackets like that. Next, we're going to change this to 139. In fact, sometimes when you can't paste it in here, all you have to do is just to drag the slider until you get your desired amount. So for our start position, column 1, we're going to set this to 11 and our end position to 36, like that. Next, we're going to go to the design tab, click on alignment and make sure that our row alignment is set to left. So as before, we're going to come over here to our spacing and add a custom padding of 0 throughout, like that. Right, so we're all done here. Let's save. And then next we need to add a divider module. So I'm going to click this plus button here and search for my divider. Select it. We're going to show it. And then we're going to come over here to design. In fact, before we go to design, we need to add a background color. So we're going to come over here to background and let's select linear for this. Click our plus button and add our first color. So I'm going to paste my first color like that. And then for my second color, this is going to have some transparency. So I'm going to need to add my information here within the brackets. So I'm going to paste it. So here we're going to set this to 161. Our start position to 18 and end position to 38, like that. Click on the design tab. So let's come over here to color and select black for our divider line. Click on styles. So this is fine at solid and also it's right at the top. So let's come over here to sizing. So our font weight, for our divider weight, let's set this to 6. Height, let's set this to 100. And finally, the width to 60%. In fact, let's set it to 70. And for our modular alignment, let's set this to the left. Now it's time to add our text module. So let's go ahead and save this for now. So our text module needs to come right below our divider. So I'm going to click this plus button here, search for my text, select my text module, click on background. And again, we're going to come over here to our gradient, click the plus button to add our first color. This needs to be an RGBA value. So I'm just going to drag this to the bottom so I can access my brackets like that. Paste my color. Click on the second color. I'm going to paste it like that. So our gradient type is fine at linear. And then our direction here needs to be set at 151 like that. Next, it's time to add our start and end position. So here I'm going to set this to 20 and our end position to 40. So in my text here, I'm going to add 03 for chapter 3. And then I'm going to come over here to design, click on text, and I'm going to search for my font, which is here like that. Now we can't really see it here because it is quite small. So we're going to increase the size to 69 and we're going to make it bold. So we're going to come over here and select bold. Our text color needs to be black. That. Right, so this needs to be set as centered. And 1.7 as our line height is perfect. Next, we're going to come over here to sizing. Set this to 70. And for our modular alignment, let's set this to left. So now let's start playing around with our spacing. So we're going to start over here with our top margin. So let's set this to -20. Take a look at how that looks. 124. Okay. So let's come over here to our padding. We're going to set this to 60, 150, and 60. Okay, so that's looking much, much better. Fantastic. Right. So now let's save and add our second text module. So I'm going to click this plus button here. Search for my text module. And we're going to call this chapter. Like that, and we're going to come over here to our design and let's choose our font, and this is going to be Arial. Select it. So for our size, let's make it 20 and we're going to make this black for our font color. So for our line height, let's set this to 1 EM and let's center this. Next, let's come over here to sizing and let's set our width to 80%. Because you can see here at 100, this is not lined right below our chapter marker. So let's set this to about 80. Then I'm going to make sure that it's aligned to the left. Finally, we can see here that our text is way here to the bottom. So we need to bring it up a bit. So to do that, we need to come over here to spacing and add a custom margin of -150. Now we can see that our chapter is now close to our number here on the top, which is fantastic. So let's go ahead and save and add another text module. So I'm going to click this plus button, search for it, select it. We're going to call this services. So we're going to come over here to design, click on text. So our font is going to be Arial 20 for the size. And this time, instead of leaving it at regular, we're going to make this bold. Right, so let's center it. Click on sizing. Bring this down to about 70. To about 80. We can see that our color here is not matching. So let's go back to our text and set this to black. So I'm going to drag this all the way down and set our line height to 1 EM. So let's come back here to our sizing and make sure that this modular alignment is set to left. So we need to bring this services text closer to the chapter. So to do that, we're going to come over here to spacing and add a custom margin of -20. So now we can see it's much closer and it looks much, much better. And then finally, we're going to add a custom padding of about 40 pixels. Right, so that's all we have to do for this one. Okay, so let's save and let's move on to our last and final one. So I'm going to save. So as before, I'm going to add a new row with 2 columns. We're going to come over here into our row settings. Click on design, align this to the right. Click on spacing and make sure our custom padding is set to 0 to the top, 0 to the right, bottom and left. Okay, so let's save and add our first text module. So I'm going to click this plus button here, search for text, select my module, we're going to come over here to the content area and add 04. Click on background. And this time we're going to need a gradient. So I'm going to click the second tab, click our plus button to add our first color. I'm going to paste it. In fact, this is going to be an RGBA. So I'm going to select my text in the middle of the brackets and replace it with my new text. Come over here to my second color and I'm going to paste my color in here like that. So for a gradient type, it's fine at linear, and my direction needs to be set at 55. My start position, I'm going to set this to 25, and my end position is fine at 100. Right, so now it's time to go into the design tab. Click on text. So our font needs to be set to Cantata 1. So I'm going to select it. Our text size needs to be set at 220. So obviously this is going to be massive for a mobile device. So let's come over here and do our settings. So I'm going to click this little icon here, come to a smartphone, and we're going to set this to about 100. So that's much better. Next, we're going to set our color. Now this time we're going to set this to a light gray, so it matches with our background. And then we're going to set our text orientation to right. Next, we're going to come over here to our sizing tab. And we're going to set our width to 82, and we're going to align this to the right like that. And then lastly, we're going to add our custom padding. So I'm going to click on spacing, and for our top, we're going to set it to 60, and then 50, 60. Now we can see it's nice and big, which is brilliant. So let's go back to our text settings background, because it looks like my colors were not applied correctly. So I'm going to come back here and click on my first color and paste my hexadecimal, my RGBA value like that. Click on my second color and paste my second color in here. Right, so this is what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save, and then it's time now to add our second module. So I'm going to click this plus button here to add our text module. Select it. We're going to call this chapter. Right, so let's go on to the design tab. Click on text. Now our font is going to be Arial. I'm going to select it here. Our size is going to be 20. Our text color needs to be set to black. And we are going to align this all the way to the right. And our line height needs to be set to 1 EM. Now let's go to the sizing tab. And we're going to make sure that our width is set to 39, because you can see here when it's all the way to 100, our text is right by the edge. So we need to bring this back a bit so it's close to the center. So let's come over here to about 39 like that. We're going to center it. Now we're going to come over here to our spacing, and we need to move this text so that it's right here in the middle. So to do that, we're going to add our custom margin. So I'm going to paste -30. So now we can see that our text is right there in the middle. So let's go ahead and save and add another text module. So again, I'm going to search for it, and I want to add my text, and my text is going to be services. Click on design, text. So I'm going to search my text font, and this time this is going to be Dancing Script. So I'm going to select it, select our text color, make sure that this is set to black. For our size, let's set this to about 45, like that. For our line height, we're going to set this to 1 EM, and we're going to align this to the right. Okay, so now it's time to go to sizing. So I'm going to click on sizing, reduce our width to about 50. We're going to center this. And we're going to come over here to our spacing and add a custom margin top of -30. And then finally, I need to add my custom margin of -30 pixels. And now you can see that this is all aligned properly. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and save. And these are our final designs.
So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so and subscribing, you'll be notified every time we release new videos similar to what you've seen today. Until next time, thanks for watching, and see you soon.